Young Turks, Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. I'm in a good mood, ready to rip on Trump as usual. One day we'll call this the good old days. Hopefully one day real soon. And turns out everybody's starting to get tired of Trump's act, even Mitch McConnell. Jerome's hold. And then of course we've got stories about all the news, including positive developments on coronavirus. What is going on with positive news? Speaking of positive news though, tomorrow, you're gonna love this special. It's called Dr. Cenk, and I will be giving life advice, okay? I will be teaching you how to be happy. How's that for a goal? How to be happy. Tomorrow, you find out at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Okay, now it's right here, so stay right here. And of course, if you're a member, you can always get all 3 hours whenever you want, dip in and out. If you want, get the Cliff Note version. Anyway, hit the join button below if you want to be a member on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching anywhere else, tyt.com/join is a great way to become a member. The other way to help the show that is really important is tyt.com/go. That's the campaign we're doing through the end of this year, trying to reach 200,000 every month so we can give you that strong progressive voice as we're gonna do today and as we do every single day. That way it's not our voice, it's your voice. We're amplifying your message out there for you. Let's take a look at the thermometer real quick, see where we are. 66,730, come on, we can get to 67. That way we're, that will be a third of the way towards our goal, while the month is more than half up. Still, that's great. Let's try to get to 67, tyt.com/go. You guys are the best of the best. And I'm sorry, one other thing I forgot to mention about Dr. Cenk. We need you to send in questions. So I'm gonna be answering your questions. It could be about your personal life or just life in general, okay? If you wanna send in written ones, great, God bless. This show is gonna be very interactive. But you could send in videos and we'll try to feature the videos. So that's at go, I know this gets a little confusing, go at tyt.com. Go at tyt.com. And look at me doing my dad thing where I actually do it with my fingers. Anyways, and you will type it out on internet and go at tyt.com for video. And I answer the questions, you become happy. Okay, anyway, let's get started, Anna.
All right, well, over the weekend, Donald Trump couldn't help but finally face the truth. He lost and Biden won in the general election. And he admitted as much in a tweet where he wrote, he won because the election was rigged. No vote watchers or observers allowed, vote tabulated by a radical left, blah, 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 more unfounded lies about voter fraud and nonsense. But the point here is he admitted that Biden won. Now later he ended up backpedaling a little bit, arguing, by the way, this morning that he won the election in all caps. But Trump also later said that Biden only won in the eyes of the fake news media. But in reality, an increasing number of GOP lawmakers are speaking out and saying, no, it's not looking good. Biden won. Sorry. Now, meanwhile, federal judges are growing increasingly frustrated with the Trump campaign and the frivolous lawsuits that they've been filing in key battleground states. So, for instance, who wouldn't be frustrated if you're hearing a case that's being represented by someone who sounds like this?
You start doing ballots like this.
Yeah. So there's Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump's personal lawyer, who is not getting paid for his services, which makes it more clear that this is more of a PR stunt and a grift by Donald Trump and his campaign. But nonetheless, let me give you some specific examples of certain or specific judges, I should say, who have grown incredibly frustrated with these cases because the Trump campaign has failed to provide any evidence of voter fraud. So it's one thing to file a lawsuit, but you have to provide evidence for what you're alleging in your lawsuit. And again, his campaign has failed to do that. So in Clark County, Nevada, for instance, the Trump camp complained that poll observers weren't close enough to monitor what poll workers were doing. But the US District Judge, Andrew Gordon, wasn't having any of that argument. He responded to that lawsuit by saying, at what point does this get ridiculous? I think we're already there. We're already there. And by the way, Trump has yet to provide any real evidence, providing that there's widespread voter fraud. That's the main allegation that we're hearing from the Trump campaign. And according to ABC News, judge after judge after judge has asked, in essence, where's the beef? We have seen numerous instances where affidavits have been filed only to be immediately pulled back once tested in state and federal court. I would not be surprised that if these baseless allegations continue, judges will begin to threaten and indeed issue sanctions. And that is a statement from Karl Racine, the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. Cenk.
All right, so much to talk about here. First of all,
Cenk.
Yep, can you guys hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
All right, sorry.
I can hear you now. Sorry, technical issue.
That's okay, no problem. All right, so first of all, I love the panic of Trump in the morning. So he accidentally concedes and he screams, "I won the election." You can almost hear him crying through the tweet. I sense tears dropping onto the phone as he was tweeting it. And now it's gotten to absolute desperation. So they're in such bad shape. Trump at one point was like, "Those aren't our lawsuits." What do you mean they're not your lawsuits? That's insane. Right? Of course they're your lawsuits. He's like, well, there's a couple other ones too. Yeah, they also lost. They were your supporters, but you have definitely filed lawsuits and you have definitely lost them, nearly all of them. 18 filed in all, 16 are already lost. 2 are not perfectly resolved yet, but emphatically on the way to a loss. We'll give you more details on that in a second. In Pennsylvania, they had to withdraw one of the cases. Why? Because they were about to file and say, oh, we didn't have observers in the room when they counted the 682,000 ballots, etc. Then they realized they just can't say it. It's a lie. They've already been, chastised by a judge earlier in a case to not lie about that. So they just withdrew it. They're like, okay, because Trump is used to nothing but PR battles. And so he views everything as, I just lie my way out of this. And losing is winning. Remember, he said when he was bankrupt on 6 different occasions, he told people, oh no, that's really good business. And they believed it. And then people gave him more money and more money. After the first one, second one, third one, all the way through the 6th one, they kept giving him more money because marketing does work. It really, in a lot of ways, it brainwashes people. So he convinced half the country that losing all your money was good business. So now, in this case, he's thinking, oh, I'm just gonna call the loss a win, and I'll just get everybody to believe it again. His problem with that is that you have to go to courts to actually have those decisions overturned, the decision of the American people, state by state, right? And when they go into courts, they're getting laughed or yelled out of court in ways that are unprecedented. I'll give you one expert here, and then I want to go back to the judges. Wendy Weiser is the director of Bipartisan Law and Public Policy Institute at the Brennan Center for Justice. We've interviewed them on this topic before. She said, when you go into court, quote, you are required to have some basis for believing your claims to be true. It has to be some basis in fact, not just wild speculation. And the bar isn't even that high. To not meet it is very unusual and inappropriate. So the one thing judges don't like is you wasting their time. And so when you but they're like, look, we're gonna hear out any case, especially on a national presidential election. But you're gonna come into our courts and then tell us, yeah, we don't have any evidence. It's beyond outrageous. And now the judges are starting to get livid.
Yeah, they really are. And just to be clear, the Trump campaign has filed at least 18 different lawsuits in battleground states. And so far, only 2 of those suits resulted in favorable rulings for the Trump campaign. Clearly not enough to undo the margin that Biden won by. But let me give you some other specific examples, Cenk. For instance, in Michigan, Judge Cynthia Stevens questioned attorneys about a sworn affidavit that Republican attorneys had gathered in which a witness said they were told about mishandling of ballots. And so her response to that lawsuit was this: what I have at best is a hearsay affidavit. If there is something in that affidavit that would indicate that the witness observed activity policy that would be a deprivation of the rights of poll watchers. I want you to please focus my attention on that. I heard somebody else say something. Tell me why that's not hearsay. Come on now. One lawyer representing the Republican poll watchers in Michigan also argued that coronavirus restrictions meant they were positioned as far as 20 feet back to the point where you can't see anything. And by the way, that's been refuted, and they've provided no evidence of that. Judge Timothy Kenney rejected that argument in court, where he says, where's the facts about that? I mean, they're just wasting people's time. Plaintiffs rely on numerous affidavits from election challengers who paint a picture of sinister, fraudulent activities occurring both openly in the TCF Center and under the cloak of darkness, Kenney wrote. This is the judge, of course, noting that those claims were decidedly contradicted by an election expert put forth by the defense. Then you move on to Pennsylvania, where, I mean, the situation is just beyond clownish at this point. So let me tell you where we're at right now. So in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, Judge Richard Haas grilled the Trump's lawyer about, campaign lawyer Jonathan Goldstein at a court hearing last week. He wanted to know the basis for Trump's claims of fraud. And here's what the judge had to say, Jake. He says, I am asking you a specific question and I'm looking for a specific answer. Are you claiming that there's any fraud in connection with these 592 disputed ballots? And at that point, the Trump campaign lawyer says this: to my knowledge at present, no.
And why are
what
you
are
here?
You doing?
Well, yeah, why are you here? Why are you in court? You went through this whole proceeding, blah, 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 and then at the end, the judge asked you point blank, you're here to prove fraud. Is there any evidence of fraud? No. And remember earlier, we told you also in Pennsylvania, they said, oh, they didn't allow poll observers in. So then the judge asked them, were there poll observers in? He says, yes, there was non-zero poll observers in. What does non-zero mean? Were there poll observers in the room? Yes. Okay, so the one that they withdrew in Pennsylvania just today, they were gonna again claim there were no poll observers, except that's a lie and already got proven to be a lie by his own lawyers in Pennsylvania in court. So they withdrew it and they're like, but we're filing something anyway. They're like, okay, what's your new claim? They're like, okay, our new claim is that in Democratic counties, they did what's called curing, which is if somebody hands in a deficient ballot in any way that you can tell it's not in a double envelope, it's not signed, etc., you could return it to them and have them return you their one and only vote. And they're like, well, Democrats did that in some of their counties, but Republicans didn't. But legal experts are like, wait, curing is perfectly legal. So why aren't you suing the Republican counties for not helping you in your cause by curing the defective ballots in the Republican counties? Why are you asking to throw out ballots that are perfectly legal? They're like, I don't know. The other cases were even weaker, so we're going with this one. And then people ask, and that's why this will get tossed out instantaneously as well. They say, okay, well, how many ballots does this curing affect? A couple hundred, maybe. Well, Biden won Pennsylvania by 70,000 votes. So even if you were totally right, and the thing that is legal, we retroactively made illegal, you would still lose by a lot. I mean, look at that earlier case in Pennsylvania. 592 cases. They admit in open court that they're lying about it. But even if they had won, you'd still have 69,400 votes left to overturn. So this is nothing but an ego trip for Trump. So he could say later, no, I won, man. I went to court, and if the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia is cheating with Biden, so is the Republican governor of Georgia, and so is the Republican city commissioner in Philadelphia, and so are all the judges, some of which I appointed, and a lot of which Bush appointed. They're all lying and cheating on behalf of Biden. Re-elect me in 2024. That's the plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's so ridiculous. And look, Trump is clearly using this as a way to fundraise. We've shared details on that. The nonstop, incessant emails from the Trump campaign urging their supporters to donate money for these nonsense legal battles. And then you find out that the money actually doesn't go toward these nonsense legal battles, goes toward Donald Trump's PAC, which could help him do a number of things, including potentially fund his race in 2024 if he's looking to run again. But there's this debate right now about whether or not what Donald Trump is doing is dangerous. And I don't think that Donald Trump is going to be able to, strong arm his way into the White House for a second term. But I do think it's dangerous in that right now there is some percentage of insane people who totally believe what Trump is selling. There are right-wing gang members who have no problem engaging in violence. We saw some of that violence over the weekend in DC. And so it's dangerous to an extent when you consider how unhinged some of these supporters can get and how they do not in any way, feel that violence is bad if they need to use the violence to defend their dear president. I mean, it's unbelievable and it's so ridiculous. It's wasting resources, it's wasting these judges' time. And the other harm that we're seeing is that Biden wants to get started, right? He's about to inherit an economic disaster because of how Trump has handled coronavirus. He's also going to inherit Donald Trump's awful handling of coronavirus, and he wants to make sure that he has a game plan in place. So once he's, in charge, once he's inaugurated, he can actually move forward with a plan that makes sense to at least slow the spread of this virus. But Trump refuses to engage in the transition process. And so Biden isn't able to have intel briefings. He's not able to have conversations with various health experts to begin this process. It's just absolutely shameful and embarrassing what this country is going through because of the man-child who sits in the White House right now.
Yeah, and so.
But some people.
Yeah, sorry, Anna. Look, I'm worried that the longer it drags on, that they will find out of a country of 330 million people, finally one case. By the way, ironically, what they've proven is that election security in this country is way better than I expected. They literally haven't found anything. By the way, if you're a Republican or a MAGA guy and you don't believe me, find one case that they have won, let alone one case that they have presented any evidence in. And so they've lost all of those cases because they couldn't find a single instance. If they find one instance, I'm afraid that he goes, oh, now it's debatable. 1 versus 330 million, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. And one of the talking points that his lackeys were going out with over the weekend is how much voter fraud is an acceptable level. In other words, we find one vote that was wrong, we want you to throw out every single vote in the country. In fact, if you listen to that insane idea, there was a guy who voted twice for Trump in Pennsylvania. According to Trump's own logic, then Biden automatically wins the state of Pennsylvania. Now, how could that possibly make sense? As it stands, Biden's already won the state of Pennsylvania. But this idea that one vote invalidates all other votes is insane, but they still haven't even found one wrong vote. But the longer he stays at it, the more that they're digging and digging and digging, and the more a third of the country at a minimum, that's full-blown Trump cult, believes that's it, democracy's in shambles. We got to resort to something else other than democracy because there's a giant conspiracy of brain juice harvesting pedophiles who are fixing the election. I'll never let go of that. A full 50% of the Republican Party believes that the Democratic Party is run by a ring of child pedophiles, and also another 50%, or probably a very similar 50%, think that it is possible that they're also doing child cannibalism and brain juice harvesting. So you think Trump can't get them to believe forever and ever and ever that this election was stolen, and that for that to then grow and fester as a wound that becomes super hard to heal over time? Of course that's what's happening right now. And every day that he delays, it gets worse and worse. Finally, on the legal proceedings, Rick Hasen is one of the top legal experts on election issues. He's at the University of California, Irvine Law School. He's a professor, and he had this quote. He said, at this point, there is no path. He said Rudy Giuliani can say what he wants and the president can keep declaring that he's won, but there's no plausible legal way this election gets overturned. We're not talking 3 Hail Marys anymore. We are talking done. Even if he threw 3 Hail Marys in a row, it still wouldn't be enough to overturn the results of the election. So there isn't a single rational lawyer in the country who now believes that this election is anything but done. But Trump is still screaming into the abyss and getting a third of this country. And most importantly, over 90% of Republican elected officials are still to this day lying on his behalf, full well knowing, 100% knowing that it's a lie. And they're all doing it in unison because it's no longer the Republican Party, it's the Trump Party. And the fact that this late, 2 weeks after the election, they still haven't broken ranks and they're still 100% behind something that they know for a fact is a lie, shows you the deep corruption of the Republican Party and that it is rotten to its core. And their only governing principle now is, what does Daddy Trump want us to do? It's a sick, sad party.
When we come back from the break, I'll tell you why White House Karen is trending. And later in the show, we'll also talk about how Donald Trump is furious with Fox News for actually speaking the truth for once. We'll be right back.
Like all small businesses, we're struggling through this pandemic right now. We are doing a drive to keep TYT healthy. We want to be able to keep doing it, and it's been a Herculean task.
Ready for transport.
We're trying to raise 2 million overall, 200,000 a month if we can. If you can, and only if you can, tyt.com/go. Seriously, because we can't sustain this show without you. So thank you for making all this possible.
Where else can I feel as free as I do here to do what I do? And I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it weren't for all the people who have really carried us throughout the years.
You're our ultimate boss. We report to you guys, and if you don't like what we're doing on air or we're not telling the truth, boom, you fire us.
We're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks.
Keep TYT alive, healthy, wonderful, awesome, independent, progressive, keep it all those things. In fact, we have a new theme, press on. Get it? It's a double meaning, tyt.com/go.
This looks like a conspiracy. This looks like a scheme to defraud.
The Bush administration put folks into the regulatory agencies who believed in destroying regulations.
Memories of the Great Depression faded.
They stood on the floor of the Senate day after day attacking what they were trying to do.
They just generated all this junk, took home huge bonuses, and then when it collapsed, they said, oh, not us.
What they ginned up was pure extortion, putting a gun to the head of Congress.
Time and again, they heard the devastation that was happening in low and moderate income communities caused by bankers, by lenders, and they chose to ignore it.
I understood that the SEC was not merely a weakened version of what it was supposed to be. It was an agent of Wall Street.
When no one's enforcing the law, the criminals take over.
Many of you already know that the TYT Army has been officially organizing for the past year. They're making decisions on which candidates and elected officials to help and always coming up with ways to inform people about progressive policies. Now, we want to give a huge shout out to some special volunteers and highlight accomplishments of our TYT Army. In Michigan, State Leader Tara West and Captain Justine Robinson organized the team's first Beer and Politics. How fun does that sound? Look, they thought of this idea at one of their monthly meetups in order to help connect TYT supporters and grow their team's volunteers. Here's what Tara had to say. Our first Beer and Politics event in Grand Rapids was a success. We had 5 new people show up who are enthusiastic about TYT. They all found out about our event through our text bank and they liked the laid back nature of our get together. Looking forward to connecting with them next month and hopefully meeting a few more. Thank you, Tara and Justine, for leading the way in Michigan. To learn more about the TYT Army and how you can help from home or even start your own team, head to tyt.com/army. Check your spam folder for lost emails to stay up to date with our events.
How would I look walking a dog on the White House lawn? Would that be?
I'm Mike Shekels, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations. So if you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it. This here is Johnny Greenwald.
I'm Manager of Post-Production Technology. Simplest terms is I deliver the content.
And this is our master control room. We have many, many more destinations than ever before, and we created this room to consolidate it, to make sure that everything's going out is up to standard, so we meet all of our contractual agreements.
Back on the Young Turks, let's go to the member section first. No More Trigonometry says, Dr. Cenk, the gift that we didn't know we wanted, but nevertheless the gift that we need. Dr. Cenk is making a house call tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, coming to your house through all the platforms we're on. So check that out, and I'm gonna give you advice, and go to go@tyt.com, send in a video, and I'll give you life advice. You could ask for either personal advice, or you could ask about life in general, a general question about life, but not about politics, okay? But back to politics. My USA is better than this BS, writes in. Cenk's prediction comes true again about the concession, non-concession. It's like shampoo directions. Trump concedes, unconcedes, cries, and repeat. So I said he would do it several times. We're on the board. We've got one concession and unconcession. Now, let's see how many he piles up. I'm gonna go to Super Chat here. Jenna Whitney says, what a nightmare this has become, exhausting. Jenna, we're all right there with you. Just get out already, for God's sake, and end the madness. And Leith Kristen Merrow with a wonderful donation on Super Chat. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm gonna give shout outs to Twitch folks right now, people who gifted subs. Who's leading the pack? As always, Obi Mom Kenobi gifted another 10 subs. I'm the K got 3 months with Prime. Remember, if you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you on Twitch, but we get the revenue, so it's a giant win-win. Check that out. And look at this, John Irola gifted a sub. And then Dragon Squad First Class gifted 2 subs. And then Depressed Progressive gifted 5 subs, and then donated 800 bits. Your depression is leading to our optimism. You gotta change your handle. I don't want you being a depressed progressive. I want you to be a happy one. Lucky for you, Dr. Cenk's making a house call tomorrow, so make sure you watch that. All right, Casper, what's next?
As Donald Trump and his campaign continue to file frivolous lawsuits alleging unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud, people have been clowning him on social media in a way that makes a lot of sense. So you might have noticed recently that White House Karen was trending. And of course, they're referring to Donald Trump and the nonstop whining on Twitter, all caps tweets about how it was rigged, how it's so unfair, he won the election. And so here's some fun memes that you might have come across. Here's one of my favorites, where you have Donald Trump's face photoshopped on the body of, one of the wife in that couple that decided to pull out their guns once they saw protesters in their neighborhood. Stop counting is what the meme says. Then you have the typical Karen haircut in the next meme, where Trump is called President Man Karen. I need to speak to the manager of Twitter. And then finally, the famous hairstyle from Kate +8. And this meme says, I want to speak to the polls manager. I mean, it's funny, but it's also embarrassing for the country, what we're experiencing right now. His juvenile behavior, his nonstop narcissism, and the fact that he's willing to do anything and everything if it, pleases his ego, his self-interests. So on one hand, you chuckle when you come across this stuff, but then on the other hand, just deeply, deeply embarrassing. This is the current president of the United States.
So Washington Post actually had a very good op-ed about this over the weekend. They explained 3 possible reasons why Trump is doing this, and they're all correct. It's not either or. Number one, if he can steal the election, he would do it in a second. That's why we say that he's a natural born fascist. So it's obvious from his actions now. In an election, he is not within country mile of being able to steal. He's still trying to steal it. Right now, if you said to him, Donald Trump, are you president or Joe Biden? He'd be like, oh, me, definitely. How do I know that? He just tweeted, I won the election. He's still saying it. even though he knows for a fact he did not win the election. Point number 2 is he's desperately trying to find a way to enrich himself. And so as we showed you in the emails that they send out, it shows that he can actually keep almost all the money that you're sending for his legal defense. And number 3 is he really is a conspiracy theorist at heart. So I think he believed a lot of the conspiracy theories that he pushed. That's why he went on Alex Jones' show and said it was a great show. And he's the one that started the birther conspiracy against Barack Obama, of course. And so I think that he's dumb enough to think, yeah, probably the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia, the Republicans in Georgia are helping Biden rig the election, and all these insane conspiracies that aren't even close to true. And he's not smart enough to actually read any of the details and put his best case forward. He just throws stuff up against the wall. It'll be outlandish. It'll be beyond ridiculous. He'll retweet it like, what do you guys think? Did the aliens maybe steal the votes? No on aliens? No, I didn't mean aliens, of course not. I meant the Republicans are stealing it for the Democrats. Oh, that kind of worked. Let's keep going with that one, right? And so that's where we are today, but we know who Trump is. We know Trump is a borderline lunatic. We know he's one of the dumbest guys alive. And we know that for a fact that he's a con man his whole life. Trump University, Trump charity, they were all scams. He had to admit in court they were scams. And he had to pay giant fines. So the main question to me is, how about the Republican Party? So we showed you the graphic at the end of last week. There's only 4 senators, Republican senators, that have come out and said that yes, Joe Biden has won the election. The other 49, so the overwhelming majority of the Republican Party, nope. No, I don't know, I can't count. Oh, you lost every single case? Well, you presented no evidence. I don't know, maybe we won. Can we steal it? Let's try to steal it. Oh, Donald Trump, don't tweet against us. So Langford from Oklahoma, at the end of last week, we shared with you guys, he threatened saying, I'm gonna step in if by Friday there's something hasn't happened here and make sure that at least Biden gets the intelligence briefings. So wait, we're on Monday, so what happened? Did Senator Langford step in? Nope, backpedal. I don't know, maybe Trump won. I got a lot of mean tweets and I got scared. And since I'm such a coward and I'm corrupt because I'm a Republican, I thought let's keep trying to steal the election in a way that makes no sense at all and humiliate ourselves because I don't want Donnie Baby angry at me. That's the pathetic state of the Republican Party.
Well, Donald Trump and the Republican Party has gotten so pathetic that they can't help but push back against some of these claims of voter fraud. So let's talk a little bit about that because I'm seeing more and more of these segments on Fox, and I think it is important to debunk Trump. So Trump has grown increasingly angry with Fox News because Fox News is, for once, pushing back against some of his ridiculous claims, unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud. In a recent segment, they looked into specific claims made by the Trump campaign and debunked those claims one by one. And following that segment, of course, Trump tweeted a bunch of nasty things toward Fox, which we'll get to in just a second. But first, let's watch the video.
The president says observers were not allowed in the counting rooms. Is that true?
That's totally untrue.
The president says, quote, bad things happened that our observers were not allowed to see. Is that true?
Absolutely not.
Have you seen any evidence of voter fraud here?
I have not.
And how about the allegations about Dominion voting systems, that they supposedly changed Trump votes to Biden votes? Well, here's part of the company's answer to that allegation. Quote, vote deletion, switching assertions are completely false. Dominion is a nonpartisan US company. Dominion has no ownership relationships with the Pelosi family, Feinstein family, Clinton Global Initiative, Smartmatic, Skytho, or any ties to Venezuela. Dominion works with all US political parties. You know, prosecutors say that any voter or election fraud allegation will be thoroughly investigated. And if the fix were in, if there was wrongdoing, we will know about it. But election officials across the country insist, as of today, there is no evidence of any widespread fraud affecting the outcome of the presidential election. That our precious democracy was not tampered with, and that such baseless and false claims are an insult to the thousands of election officials and workers across the country who we have seen dedicating themselves 24/7 to ensure a fair and free election for all of us.
So it's segments like that essentially infuriate Donald Trump to the point where he encourages people, his supporters, to ditch Fox and go to a more right-wing extremist place to get their news, and that's of course OANN. He tweeted, "Try watching OANN, really great." And that was following the segment that I just showed you. But this is. Go ahead, Cenk. Go ahead, just have at it.
Okay, so.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's exhausting. The fact checking has to happen, right? And I just feel like the news cycle is insanely repetitive right now because he won't give it up. And I'm wondering if a better strategy at this point is to just ignore him 100%, because the federal judges are not siding with him because his campaign has failed to provide any evidence. Donald Trump is using this like hysteria that he's created in the news cycle in order to raise money for, anything other than actually funding his so-called court battles related to this election. So I feel like at this point, it's abundantly clear that he lost. There's no path to victory. He's a complete and utter liar. And I don't know. I feel like ignoring him might be the better option at this point.
Yeah, no, we tried that before, and it just doesn't work. What happens is it winds up festering more. So when there's no messaging pushback, first, the Republican base starts to think that they're totally right. Now they're the easiest to fool. They're the rubes who fell for Donald Trump's con in the first place, and they're the ones who back him 93%, literally in this election. So then pressure starts to build on state Republican legislators and national ones, and so I don't care about the national ones as much, but the state ones are relevant because the one thing you want to avoid is these different slates of electors. That would be a giant constitutional mess and really hard to deal with in the courts. In order to do that, the Republicans in the different states would just have to lie 1,000,000% and go, we don't care. We don't care that our voters voted for Biden in Pennsylvania or Georgia or anywhere else. We're just gonna say Trump won. I don't care. And now we go to the Congress, and because of the way that the rules are set up, the Republicans can win in Congress. So as long as full-scale cheating is still on the board, and it still is, there's no way we should relent in our pressure and Anna, I don't know what's gonna happen here, and that's rare when I say that. But is this nonstop crying when every single media outlet, including Fox News, is saying, no, you have presented no evidence of fraud in 18 different court cases. If that's gonna do damage to the Republican brand, because all the Republicans are backing it, right? Or if no, there's just no damage you could possibly do to the Republican brand. The Republican voters like the cheating, they like the crying, they love the whining, they love being victims or pretend victims. And like this whole thing of grievances, it's Festivus all year round for Republicans. Maybe they love it. And so maybe there'll be no damage to the Republican Party, in which case Republican politicians in every election going forward will be greatly encouraged to steal, lie, cheat, and cry after the elections and try it one more time, both before in the voter purges, etc., and after in these kind of efforts. If the poll numbers come back at some point and say, no, now all of a sudden the Republican brand is pretty badly damaged, you'll see McConnell and all those guys turn around immediately, right? But until then, we have to keep the pressure up. And so along those lines, by the way, I just wanted to say one thing two things about what the Fox News anchor said there. One, I don't like this whole thing of like, are the people who worked in the polling, et cetera, are American heroes? They are, especially if they went out there and risked their health, et cetera. So don't question the results. No. If there's a legitimate case, that's totally different. And I don't want this like support the troops kind of thing growing until we're not allowed to question any election results if there's something actually wrong and we have actual evidence, right? So I don't like that talking point. Now on the other side, the case against Dominion, I mean, they're so nuts. So now Fox News has to.
Venezuela, Cenk.
Yeah.
Venezuela. Anytime that there's something they don't like, just say Venezuela. Like, what? Like, what does Venezuela have to do with anything? Like, tying this voting system to Venezuela is just, it's like Republican 101. I feel like Charlie Kirk came up with this.
No, maybe he did. So the alt-right comes up with a lot of the talking points that go to Trump and then to everybody. I mean, Fox News is having to clarify that Dominion is not financially connected to Venezuela. That's the kind of level of insight. The Clinton Global Initiative, I don't think it even exists anymore. I'm surprised. And they threw Pelosi and Feinstein. Look, Pelosi and Feinstein are corrupt in a lot of ways, just not this way. And if any show points out Pelosi and Feinstein corruption, it's the Young Turks. Probably more so than any Republican show, right? But they didn't do this one. Clinton Global Initiative doesn't even exist anymore. I'm surprised they didn't throw Benghazi in there. And obviously Dominion, partly owned by Benghazi. Like, wait, that doesn't even make any sense. So what? Yeah, Fast and the Furious, Solyndra, long form.
It's so embarrassing. It's just so, imagine being part of that group. Imagine identifying and agreeing with those types of arguments. It's just, I use the word embarrassing a lot these days because there's a lot of embarrassing stuff going on. But anyway, we do have to take a break. When we come back, we have somewhat of a breaking news story regarding Mitch McConnell calling Donald Trump a child. Give you the details on that and more when we return.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonsen of Simonsen Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding, because this is C-SPAN. And anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simonsen Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Ooh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
What Cenk and a few other people are trying to do is give us a different perspective on reality, the reality facing the middle class and working people, not just the billionaire class.
We're here to press on and carry on the work that we've been doing that's so important.
We've begun to turn the press a little bit. 2 years ago, they would have never covered Booker. 2 years ago, they would have never covered Bowman.
This is where it started in a lot of ways.
Why is TYT the leader of the progressive media? Because we try to unite people. We give other people a platform. We help other progressive shows. We introduce people to progressives they've never heard of. We help progressive candidates, and sometimes they even win.
Cori Bush has won in Missouri. Down goes Lacey Clay. Cori Bush is the best of us.
You gave me a platform. People from this district heard about Justice Democrats by watching your show and nominated me to JD.
There is no more safe incumbent seats in the House. Bye-bye, establishment.
We're going to push Biden as far as we can.
After they win, we'll probably fight them tooth and nail. We need to have independent media overcome mainstream media.
The DNC was so stupid to deny you guys craft credentials.
We need fighters, and we need to stick together.
So this is what democracy looks like.
There is a ton of hope right now. More hope
than we have ever had in this country.
So it's up to you guys, it's up to all of us to execute this in the next 5 years. You know what that means? That means the future is ours.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited right now.
Did anybody call for an editor?
Need this in an hour.
But you're an editor too.
All right, you're gonna save the planet by just using your pocket change. How are you gonna do that? tyt.com/trees. Okay, that's it. Go there, you'll figure it out. And you saw tyt.com/go there before. Let's do a quick check-in on the thermometer. We were trying to get to 67,000 during this. Okay, hey, look at that, 67,052. Can I see 68? We got a whole post game for you members. Click the join button below, tyt.com/join. But go to go so we can get to 68,000. Let's keep it going. All right, one comment here from the member section. Harry Platt says, Michael Cohen said Trump will go to Mar-a-Lago at Christmas and never come back. I think he might be right. In which case, do I get the 400 back? Could you imagine if I'm right about everything? Could you imagine? Could you imagine? All right, Thomas Johnson writes in on Super Chat.
You're not getting that money back.
I'm saying, I don't know.
It's already been paid.
Okay.
Anyway, keep going.
All right, Thomas Johnson on Super Chat says, Georgia hand recount wrapping up. 2 points. MAGA Georgia Secretary of State deserves respect for upholding democracy. I totally agree. They messed with a Republican, not a Democrat. That's what they miscalculated. He fought back. They're used to just steamrolling Democrats. He did a great job there. Trump will net 788 votes from a batch of accidentally uncounted votes in a red rural county. Won't change the result, but progressives should welcome all votes counted. Every time, brother, that's what we say. And we said at the beginning, the middle, and end of this, we have never have a problem with a recount. And Georgia was within a recount, and they did a hand recount. That's great. Okay, we're always in favor of counting all the votes. Never change your principles for expediency, no matter what the situation is. Last one, Eric Dahlen from Norway wrote in, hey, I know this is not the right forum, but Too Strong Coffee won't send to my country, Norway, and I really want that cup. All right, brother, we're working on it. So what's coming next for TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT is another mug that you're gonna love, but also deliveries to outside the country, K-Cups, espresso, not here yet, but a lot of this is coming soon. But in the meanwhile, go to TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT and you'll see our great blends, and everybody's loving the taste of it, so check it out. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. It's rare for Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to ever say anything that goes against Donald Trump. But when it comes to questions of war and the possibility of withdrawing troops, Mitch McConnell speaks up, and that's exactly what he did on the Senate floor today. According to Business Insider, speaking on the Senate floor, McConnell, who also opposed a withdrawal of troops of Syria, stressed that the United States under Trump's leadership should not pull troops out of Afghanistan. He said the US must provide a limited but important role in defending American national security against terrorists who would like nothing more than for the most powerful force for good in the world, it's just so laughable, to simply pick up our ball and go home. So he's referring to Donald Trump's desires to pull troops out of Afghanistan as the equivalent of him picking up his ball and going home, which is, essentially a way of saying that Trump's desire here is childish. I'm actually gonna disagree with McConnell, but let me give you more of his statement. He says, quote, a rapid withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan now would hurt our allies and delight the people who wish us harm, McConnell said, adding that it was as humiliating as it was for the United States troops to withdraw from Saigon in the 1970s. So, and he also compared the possibility of withdrawing troops from Afghanistan to President Obama's withdrawal of troops from Iraq back in 2011. He says the consequences of a premature American exit would likely be even worse than President Obama's withdrawal of Iraq back in 2011, which fueled the rise of ISIS and a new round of global terrorism. I think that it's telling that you can have Donald Trump literally like try to dismantle our democratic process, refuse to accept the outcome of the general election, and McConnell says nothing. But when it comes to ensuring that we continue this endless war in Afghanistan, oh, he'll speak up. He'll speak up real quick. I mean, his donors need to make money, right? Private military contractors need to make money. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Look, I actually also disagreed with Trump pulling troops out of Syria because what that did to our Kurdish allies was just flat out wrong. We abandoned our Kurdish allies in Syria and essentially paved the way for Erdogan to go in and rain terror on our Kurdish allies. That was an issue. But in this case, there is no end in sight when it comes to the war in Afghanistan. And every single time Donald Trump has tried to negotiate a way to withdraw our troops, Republicans try to undo it. They do anything and everything necessary to undo it, including leaking these nonsense stories about how Russia is actually paying bounties to the Taliban for American soldiers. By the way, that story never materialized. Never. The New York Times just regurgitated what their sources told them, didn't even question it. And now, literally months later, there is no evidence showing that Russia is paying bounties to the Taliban for US soldiers. So I don't side with McConnell on this. It's one of the rare instances where I think Trump has the right instinct in wanting to withdraw troops. But that's not how private military contractors make money here.
Okay, so there's several different angles to the story. It's a really interesting story. First of all, McConnell going after Trump aggressively is maybe the most important part of this story, because I think what he's doing is he's signaling to Trump, we're this close to having enough of your BS. So I'm gonna call you a child here. By the way, he added, after saying they'd simply pick up our ball and go home, they would love that. Meaning the terrorists would love what Donald Trump is doing. So that's close to an open-handed slap. So McConnell's basically telling Trump, you better watch yourself. So that is a good development when it comes to the election, because they might snap and go, okay, that's it, he lost, he's gotta go, and we don't care about his crying anymore, right? Now, completely opposite of that is the point about, should we leave Iraq and Afghanistan? And there, Anna's totally right. So McConnell's 100% wrong about this. Now, I don't know why Donald Trump wants to withdraw from Iraq and Afghanistan. I know what his followers think. They think, well, that's a policy proposal that he had and he wants to follow through on it. I've never seen Donald Trump care about any policy proposal he had. I've never seen him follow through on any of it. The only one he did was tax cuts for the rich. That's the only thing he's ever cared about because that affects him. He did no other promise at all. But honestly, I don't care what his reason is. Withdrawing from Iraq and Afghanistan is the correct policy. The problem with withdrawing from Syria was he did it overnight. We had to actually scramble and get our guys out of there before they got hurt. In this case, yes, we've got a couple of months. And McConnell says that's not enough time. We've been there for 18 years. We've had plenty of time. By the way, who do the American people agree with on this one? Definitely with Trump and not McConnell. And so look at us. We're honest to the very, very end. If Trump is right about something, the 2 times that it's maybe happened ever, we tell you. So yes, it was a policy proposal. Again, putting motivations aside, if he's trying to do it so he could deliver, so he could run again in 2024 and say, hey, I got us out of Iraq and Afghanistan, great. I wanted him to get us out of Iraq and Afghanistan. So the third last component from my perspective here that's really important is that, thank you, Mitch McConnell. Not for the election stuff that might come, but for, it looked like for a while today that the Democrats, as usual, were gonna bungle this. And they were coming out, and the media was coming out as outraged at Trump for withdrawing from Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, what does that make the Democratic Party? That makes the Democratic Party the pro-war party. That's a disastrous place to be. For God's sake, guys, even if you don't care about policy, and we deeply care, we're tired of US troops dying, we're tired of civilians dying, we're tired of wasting trillions of dollars. But even if you didn't care about any of that and all you cared about was the politics, have you ever read a poll in your life? Democrats hate the endless wars, Republicans hate the endless wars. Libertarians and centrists hate it even more. So who the hell does the Democratic Party think they're appealing to when they're yelling at Trump for withdrawing when the whole country wants to withdraw? So thank you, Mitch McConnell, for stepping up loudly and saying, no, don't forget, it's the Republican Party that's pro-war and will always be for needless wars. We appreciate you being honest about that.
Yep. All right, let's get to our next story.
Look at all those cars just waiting to get some free food because they're struggling right now. Millions of Americans, and they're suffering financially. We see no stimulus deal in the works right now.
So while congressional negotiations for another round of economic stimulus have completely stalled, Americans have grown increasingly desperate, which was definitely evident in the insanely long lines for the food bank, the North Texas Food Bank, where workers there distributed more than 600,000 pounds of food for about 25,000 people. 40% of those who went to the food bank over the weekend were first timers. So it shows just how much this inaction by the federal government in regard to the pandemic and the economic crisis people are feeling is affecting their lives every single day. In fact, one woman in North Texas told CNN, quote, "I haven't been working since December. I can't find a job. They cut off my unemployment. It's a big deal. It's a real big deal." And eviction protections and other benefits are set to expire by the end of the year, and Congress has still failed to provide another round of stimulus. Now, Trump was allegedly open to stimulus funding prior to the election, but now that he lost, he doesn't really feel that he has an incentive to pass another round of economic stimulus. If you guys can remember, close to the election, he proposed a $2 trillion stimulus plan to counter Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats' $2.2 trillion stimulus plan. Pelosi rejected that. Mitch McConnell wasn't willing to sign on to that either. And so now here we are, and there are worries that there will not be another round of stimulus until Joe Biden is inaugurated. And that is awful considering he won't be inaugurated until January 20th. Now, Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader, has made clear what his priorities are. It's not to represent the best interests of the American people who are truly suffering right now. He wants to ensure that he confirms more of Donald Trump's judges. And that's what we've learned today through various reports. In fact, let me go to the next graphic where Vanita Gupta, who's the CEO of Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, she says, today marks 6 months since the House passed the HEROES Act. But guess what McConnell is focused on this week? Judges. He's lined up votes on 6 Trump judicial nominees for lifetime seats instead of passing meaningful COVID relief. That's his priority as the pandemic rages on. And I should note that Trump can actually appoint a dozen or more federal judges between now and the end of his term.
Okay, so first 2 things. One is about how bad coronavirus is. So we told you around election time, it had gotten up to 100,000 cases a day, which was a record. Way worse than March or April when we thought it was raging. It's raging worse around the election. So how has it been in the last 2 weeks? Nearly doubled. On Friday, there was over 184,000 cases. Record on top of record cases. But now that the election is over, the Republicans say, we're not gonna give any relief. Trump is basically saying, oh, you didn't vote for me? Okay, well, I'll punish you with death and no help at all. Both death, physically, health-wise, but also economically. Now, the last part is the negotiation tactics. It drives me crazy. So the Democrats start with a proposal for $3.4 trillion. The Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell starts with $1 trillion. Democrats go, fine, we'll go half a loaf, we'll go to $2.2 trillion. They come down, right? So where do the Republicans go? They gotta go up to meet them, right? No, McConnell goes, I'll go down. It's now $0.5 trillion. What are you gonna do now? And Democrats, I guarantee you, will settle for something less than the original Republican proposal of $1 trillion by the end of this. I shouldn't say guarantee, but I'd be surprised if they didn't, because that is always how negotiations work between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats will ask for half a loaf. Republicans will start with a quarter of a loaf, they'll cut it to an eighth of a loaf, and eventually they'll settle on less than a quarter of a loaf. And then the entire national media will call Nancy Pelosi a master legislator. No, everybody's gonna get screwed on this, unfortunately, and it's sickening. All right, we got an amazing post game. So many more stories. Hit the join button below. We'll see you there in a minute.